I was a responding officer during the Bayside Mall incident. Or to some of you, you might know it as the Miami Mall alien incident, or something along those lines. I've told absolutely no one at all. Not officially, not even my wife. I would have been putting her in danger if I did, but that isn't a problem anymore. I won't go into useless detail on why, but it just doesn't matter anymore if I talk about this anywhere. All I ever told her about that day was that there was crowd panic. Nothing serious, just told her the same story that the news went with. Just dumbass teenagers setting off fireworks drunk as shit, starting fights with people, and they caused a mass panic. That's what we were told to say. That's what we wrote in the report we all signed. I've signed a lot of bullshit in my years, but that one felt like swallowing a razor. I was already downtown that night before the incident happened. I got called in real early because of the fireworks complaints and crowd noise. It was New Year's after all, and Bayside gets rowdy for those who don't know. It isn't the kind of place you'd swing by casually to relax. I was posted just a block off Biscayne when the first 911 report came in. The call was pretty garbled, to tell the truth. Someone was just ranting something about people collapsing in the food court. I think it was a middle-aged woman. They sent me and my patrol partner Torres in to check up on what was happening. Dispatch just kept calling it a disturbance when talking to us, but something in the voice didn't match the language. She sounded off somehow, but I'm not sure how to fully explain it. Too calm maybe, or too slow. Torres picked up on it pretty quickly too. We joked about it at first. Maybe dispatch had one too many mimosas, he said, but the joke didn't land. The closer we got, the quieter the city felt. I don't mean the usual lull between fireworks. I mean quiet, like the sound had been scooped out of the air. If you live here, you know this is a busy-ass place, so a total absence of noise is strange. I remember walking up the steps into the plaza and seeing kids running, but not screaming. Some of them looked like they didn't even know why they were running. Others were frozen in place, twitching like they were glitching out, eyes wide, mouths open like they wanted to scream but forgot how. Torres went up ahead of me first. I stayed closer to the edge of the crowd. That's when I saw the first body that day. The guy was male, maybe mid-20s at most from what I could. He was slumped against a pillar like he sat down and just never got back up again. His hands were covered in blood, but not from any wounds I could see. It was like it had just, I don't know, leaked out of his skin maybe? He had some on his face too, so maybe he used his hands to try and stop a nosebleed or something? I leaned into him and checked for a pulse. He was cold, but his eyes were open, and not like dead open either. It honestly looked like he was still awake, like he died mid-thought. I remember all of this so vividly, every single little detail, because it's all I can think about anymore. When you think about something that much, you just can't help but retain those small details. The moment I radioed for backup, my comms crackled. I heard the crackle of static, followed then by that high-pitched ee tone you get before feedback. Except it didn't stop. It dug into my jaw like dental drills and really made my teeth hurt. Torres's voice came through, but it was kind of distorted. Seemed strange because usually there would never be any kind of interference around here, and our equipment is checked thoroughly before our shifts. I think he said something like, "Don't come up here," but the feed died before I could confirm with him. I looked around. That's when I noticed the glass. The storefronts, every last one of them, were covered in this fine film. Like condensation, but wrong. It looked more like the inside of a freezer after a door's been left open too long. Some of them had patterns forming in the fog. Swirls and spirals, looking almost like math symbols. Like fingerprints made by something that didn't have fingers. The people still inside were standing still. By now they weren't hiding or screaming or anything like that. They were just standing. Some of them looked like they were listening to something. One woman was mouthing words I couldn't hear. She was smiling like she was praying. Blood was pouring out of both ears. I started toward the escalator when I heard this deep droning sound. It wasn't anything mechanical. It was organic, but too big and too deep to ever be made by a human. It came from inside the floor. Not below the floor, but inside it. Then the lights flickered and dimmed. Everything shifted like a depth perception trick. You know when your eyes adjust to darkness but it takes a while, and you suddenly realize there's a shape in the corner of the room once they have? It was like that, but all over. The air went heavy. My bones hurt. I saw something then. I didn't see the thing everyone else keeps talking about. I didn't see the 10-foot alien or whatever, not exactly anyway. What I saw was the space around the alien or creature trying not to be affected by its presence. It was like light was avoiding the spot it was standing in and space actually bent around the thing. It was like gravity didn't know what to do with it. I only caught a glimpse. It was tall, sure, but not in a big guy way. It was wrong in every proportion. Its movement was like frames skipping in a video. First here, then forward, then even further. It didn't walk in any kind of way, just kept slipping forward like that. I never saw it just move fluidly. At one point I thought there were two of them. Then I realized I was seeing it from multiple angles at the same time. I don't know how to explain that or how the fuck that is possible, but that is what I saw. Torres suddenly came stumbling down the escalator all on his own. His face was pale. There was a wet stain down one leg. If I wasn't scared out of my mind and the fact that I might have done it too, I would have made a joke about him pissing his pants. He didn't make eye contact with me when he reached my floor. He just kept whispering. It said my name, over and over to himself, or maybe to me, I don't know. I tried to help him outside the door, just to get him some fresh air or something, but he jerked back suddenly and clawed at his own neck. He ripped his radio out and smashed it on the tile. I tried to calm him down, but he kept screaming, "I won't answer it, I won't answer it." That's when 2 men came in. Let me be clear, these guys were not cops, and not EMS or anything of the sort. They were wearing black coats with no patches on. They were also wearing earpieces. One of them flashed a badge to me, but not a badge I've ever seen. Normally I would have contested this or stopped them, but I had bigger fish to fry with my partner losing his mind, and I alone had no chance at controlling the situation at hand. These guys didn't even glance at the bodies. One of them just pointed at Torres and said, "He's not viable." They started walking toward me and Torres, telling me they needed to help him. It just felt like everyone that day had lost their damn minds. I told them to back the fuck up, and that I would shoot unless they properly identified themselves, but a third guy that I didn't see come in grabbed me from behind before I could draw my firearm. One of the other ones injected something into Torres's neck. He went limp immediately. There was no spasm or resistance from him, and I could do nothing but watch. They didn't tell me who they were exactly, just that they were my superiors. More cops arrived on the scene not long after this happened, my superiors, and they backed up their story. This calmed me down and shut me up real fucking quick. If they had come out here for this, then I knew I was in deep shit. They told me I was to leave through the east entrance and that I only had this one chance. They told me not to look back, and that I was lucky to be given a second chance. One of them pressed a packet into my chest and said, "Read it, sign it, destroy it," told me that there would be follow-ups from my superiors shortly. I didn't argue with them this time. They walked me past at least 20 people who looked dead on their feet. Eyes were bleeding down his cheeks. Another was biting the edge of his own hand hard enough to tear. Not one of them looked away from the center of the mall. When I passed the food court, I saw a girl sitting cross-legged on a table, maybe 10 years old. No shoes, just humming to herself. There was blood on her face, but I don't know if it was hers or not. She was holding something in her lap, but I couldn't fully make out what it was. Whatever it was also covered in blood. I got outside and threw up behind a squad car. Everything in my body was shaking, like I was coming down from something, or about to go into shock. I tried to radio in again, but it was a dead channel. Just that constant high whine under the static again. I pressed the panic code twice. Nothing happened. The air outside didn't feel right either. I heard footsteps behind me and turned fast. It was one of the men in the black coats again, probably to make sure I got out of there and quickly. I asked what was actually happening, but he would not give me an answer. More unmarked vans were starting to roll up. They were matte black with no plates on them that I could see. One of them hissed. A handful of people in hazmat suits started filing out. Some of them had what looked like Geiger counters. Others were carrying what I thought were defibrillators, but larger, bulkier, with cables that looked more like restraints. I asked where EMS was. He said, "There are no injuries." I said, "There are bodies in there." He looked at me and said again, "There were no injuries." He told me he forgot about something and that I needed to take it right now. He handed me a small sealed foil packet. Dissolve under tongue. Now. He stepped closer to me when I gave him a puzzled look. "You've been inside. You're contaminated. This will stabilize you." I said, "Stabilize me for what?" He just repeated, "Now, I did it." I tore it open and let the strip dissolve under my tongue. It tasted like copper and dirt. A wave of nausea hit me almost instantly. Then it passed, and then everything felt fine. "You'll feel a little disconnected," he said. "That's good. That's the filter setting in." I asked what the hell he was talking about. He spouted some nonsense jargon at me that I didn't understand at all, and I can't recall now. My head was becoming kinda light and fuzzy. Something like amnestic bleed and outside of your perception, but I could be recalling wrong. When I gave him a blank stare, he told me keep fucking moving and get out of my sight. I looked back at the mall. Lights were going out one by one. More vans pulled in. One of them had cages in the back. I don't remember getting home at all. I must have driven, but I can't really remember. Honestly, a lot of my memories from that day are really hazy, and it's a miracle I can remember what I can. Even though I can remember the events, they almost feel not real in my head. Like my mind is rejecting them somehow. You know how some people have different levels of imagination? I forget what it's called, but it's like, some people can visualize full images and places, and some people can only see it partially. Then the really unlucky ones can't visualize anything in their head at all. Usually when recalling a memory, I'm really good at this and can see a full picture, like a full HD snapshot of the memory. With this one though, I can barely get a flash. The memories are there in my head, the words to describe what I saw, the general events that took place, but the picture isn't visible. I remember the details, but without actually remembering the details, if that makes sense. Anyway, the next thing I remember is sitting at my kitchen table with the folder open, pen in hand, already mid-signature. I didn't even know what I was signing. It just felt inevitable. Most of the document was nonsense, tons of legal jargon that I didn't understand. I think I got the gist of it though. The next day, Bayside was fully open again. There was no caution tape, no cops, no crime scene. It was like nothing happened. There was no trace that anything occurred that day, not a speck of blood or litter or any evidence of the panic that occurred. Even the broken glass from the storefronts was gone. Every pane was replaced. The news ran a segment that night. Minor fire causes evacuation at Bayside Marketplace. No injuries reported. Said something about the fire being caused by fireworks being set off. I think they mentioned having 2 people in custody. Same story in the local newspaper. They showed footage from earlier that day. Crowds walking through the plaza. I called Torres's number that night. Disconnected. I tried going by his apartment, but someone else was living there. They said they'd been there for months. I went to our sergeant the next morning and asked if he'd heard from Torres. He stared at me a beat too long, then said, "You mean the Torres from traffic?" I said, "No, Officer Marcos Torres, patrol. He was partnered with me a few nights ago." He frowned. "You've been solo for the last month, right? Since Morales transferred out?" I didn't say anything. He clapped me on the shoulder. "Maybe take a couple personal days. You've been running hard." I just nodded at him.